Political Free Agents podcast, and we are back. It's Sunday, fun day. Sunday, the day for football, the day for hanging out, the day for sleeping, the day for church, whatever you got going on today. Today is that day, and I had my game going, and then my connection dropped, so always try to keep that going so I could at least see kind of what's going on while I'm sitting here yapping with you cats. All right, so it's been an interesting week regarding the presidential updates, in relation to all the challenges and everything that's going on with Trump, everything that he's doing to basically, well, I'll put it in the way he would say it. The way he would say it is he's doing everything he can to preserve our democracy and win, basically, because for him not winning is something that's and to a lot of followers, it's something that is against our democracy. However you want to see it, it's up to you. But they basically had a press conference this week, and the press conference was, to a lot of people, was them laying down the gauntlet. Like, oh man, they just made the case that there's rampant election fraud. I'm watching and I'm looking for keywords. Some of the things that we've talked about in the past, some of those things that whenever you are uh, reading an article uh, or watching the news, you have to watch out for those keywords. It's kind of uh, like a math problem. Remember the word problems in math where they would say Johnny has an apple, Johnny has two apples, he has three bananas, and a bike. How many, uh, how many pieces of fruit does he have? And you're like, oh, what's the bike got to do with anything, right? It's just this extra information that's floating around just to try to throw you off some, right? And they do that a lot on the news. And this is why I've said in the past, I can't watch the news regularly and for too long, because I end up just like yelling at the TV like it's a football game, because, you know, or laughing hysterically, and people are in the house are like, what's wrong with you? Like they don't know why the news is so funny. But I pay attention to these key words and things, like when they say in the press conference, they were talking about the Dominion software. And this was Trump's legal team. And it was like an hour long, and I didn't catch the whole thing. So from my understanding, Mike had mentioned that there was some meat in there. There were some signed affidavits that were in there, things like that, which is cool. But we've been down this signed affidavit lane before, where we had what's his name? Anyway, the gentleman, the postal worker who had a signed affidavit, and then turns out Project Veritas wrote that entire statement. And so it wasn't even accurate. He was being interviewed, and people were going after the interviewers, saying that they manipulated him and all this, like he was a lamb, sent to slaughter. Matter of fact, somebody has said that as an example, like he's just completely incapable as a grown man of handling himself. But from what I listened, he was able to handle himself in that interview. But he was outright and honest that he didn't hear exactly what was stated in that affidavit. So when I hear that there's other people who have signed affidavits, then let's see. Let's put them under a microscope too, and let's make sure that what they're saying is not along the lines of what we've seen before. But ultimately, regardless of the court of public opinion, there's a legal system here, right? And so, you can go back episodes and you can see we've stated run through the process, right? Georgia's doing a recount. Cool, do the recount, right? There's a process. There's a legal process that's happening here. Trump has every right to go through these legal challenges do what you feel, because it's not like our election system is completely impervious to human error, fraud, and abuse, right? It's not like we have a perfect system that can't be abused. It can be, and people try it. They tried it this year. There's multiple things that they've stated they caught that were considered fraud, and they've, made sure that those things weren't related to the result. But if there's something that had happened that went on in one of these cities and was counted, or in one of these counties and was counted, and it shouldn't have been, present the evidence. Let's see. Like, and I've been waiting to see, the first few days after Biden was called. I really honestly thought, from all the conversation that they were having and all this thing about voter fraud, there was a bunch of, you know, like Rudy Giuliani said this week, I went to sleep and he was up in all of these states. And I woke up and it's like, now he's losing. And they counted. That's how counting works, right? So aside from like those ridiculous claims of, I just can't make sense of it, right? Like somebody, I don't even know who, but they were posturing on Twitter. I saw, I think it was last night or this morning, that basically, how in the world do you um, how do you justify Biden winning in a bigger margin than Hillary Clinton, and he can't even get people to come to his rallies? This makes no sense. Something is up here. It's like what? Like, as hated as Hillary was, they can't fathom that Joe Biden, not being as hated as him, had a better turnout. I mean, hated as she was, had a better turnout. And that means fraud, right? Like, okay, like, I mean, maybe there's something there that you want to look at, but don't do it off of just pure conjecture of, I can't understand this. It makes no sense, right? Like, there's no way this happened. How did Biden win the popular vote and Trump had these massive rallies, airports full, and stadiums and overflow and all these things? How in the world did Biden win and Trump was doing all that sort of stuff? It's not that aspect of, we have proof, that bothers me, because if you have proof, present it. It's the aspect that I can't understand it. Therefore, it has to be fraud. We have to investigate this because I can't understand it. And it's just rich for me, because it's not like the right is the only side that does this, because the left, same concept, right? 2016, it was a lot of the same stuff. People were calling for, even though they may not have been getting it, or going like as hard pressed as this, because there was no one to concede. Biden was done, right? So there was no one that needed to uh, say, yes, I lost, he won, in that sense, right? In terms of like transitioning, right? A couple of days later, Obama opened up the transition team uh, to the Biden camp, or excuse me, to the Trump camp, and they started the transition process. So Hillary couldn't block any of that, right? She had conceded early anyway, but what could she do even if she didn't? Um, they looked into certain things, and the last ditch effort were the electors, and people were calling for the state legislators to overturn it, because there's no way, we can't have Trump as a president. There's no way, and they wanted to overturn that. So now we're at this place where they presented these cases to these judges, and the judges are throwing this stuff out with prejudice. And that means, basically, in layman's terms, with prejudice, means get this out and don't bring it back, right? And so it's really been a rebuke after rebuke after rebuke with these legal challenges. And you're starting to see the governors, I'm sorry, not the governors, um, other Republicans, you're starting to see them actually turn around now and present things in, or reference things like President-elect Biden or Trump needs to stop these things because it's getting pretty bad at this point. Uh, so these these Republicans are starting to take off. I mean, uh, turn the corner and not stick with the Trump rhetoric and things like that, which is good because these the meetings are fine. Have the meetings, have the presentation, like discuss it openly. Fine, do that. The press conferences I'm referencing, um, but at least have something whenever you go to court, right? All right, so we'll cover these last few pieces, then we're going to jump off the election because it's over. Uh, Georgia's recount is now done. Finito. They did the recount, and it's same result as it was before. There wasn't, I didn't look at the exact numbers. It basically was, I think initially it was like 14,000 was his initial count. I'd have to go back and look, but it's not that exciting to dig into. But the final was 12,600. This is an article from Axios. And the article headline, Trump campaign asked Georgia for another recount. And so basically this, they went through and they counted. And we mentioned in, I think, the last episode or episode before that, that they ended up finding that there were two counties that actually did not have all of their results uploaded. It ended up not being 100% for Biden or Trump. I think Trump ended up like plus 800 or something like that in one of them, plus 600 or 800 in another one, which is a big deal, right? Like you can't just forget to hit upload, right? And the problem that's had here is these are in Republican counties, right? These aren't just liberals that are like, oops, I forgot. These are Republican counties, at least in these that I'm referring to here. All right, so in this article it says why does it matter? Because remember, Axios breaks it down with why does it matter, the details, and what they're saying in the big picture, and then links to go deeper. So what they're saying in terms of why it matters. State election officials and Governor Brian Kemp, who's a Republican, on Friday certified Georgia's election results that show President-elect Joe Biden officially won the state by just over 12,600 votes. But Georgia officials had said earlier that the Trump campaign had until Tuesday to request a recount since the margin was within 0.5%. Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, a Republican, asked his deputy in a written message to officially notify county election directors to prepare for the recount and to notify political parties so they could muster observers at their respective sites, which he said would be highly scrutinized. This was from the AP. Emphasize to the county, this is Raffensperger speaking in his message, emphasize to the counties the importance of transparency and accuracy of the process. The new count would be completed using scanning machines and paid for by the counties. Here's what they're saying. Trump's legal team said in a statement confirming the filing of the recount petition, we are focused on ensuring that every aspect of Georgia state law and U.S. Constitution are followed so that every legal count is voted, or excuse me, every legal vote is counted. President Trump and his campaign continue to insist on an honest recount in Georgia, because the first one, I guess, wasn't honest, which has to include signature matching and other vital safeguards. Now, see, they're wanting to change things, right? They don't want to just recount. They don't want to verify what was there. They actually want things to be scrutinized so that they can try to remove votes. And this is where they get to that point of how close does the signature match? 80%, 90%, 40%, 60%. What number, what threshold is considered a valid signature? And then they want to toss those votes that they don't deem valid, right? There was one state, I can't recall where, maybe California or somewhere. I think the threshold, some of the vote signatures made it through was like a 40 or 60%. I can't remember the exact number, which they were saying, well, that's fraud. That's obviously other people are signing it. And I think they were on Fox News when I was watching this, and I forget even who was the anchor, but they were basically like, yeah, but like my signature is not the same from 2 years ago either. Right. And for somebody like myself, my wife's signature, impeccable. I mean, she has a perfect signature. I wish I could write like her, but I can't. No way, shape, or form. My handwriting is terrible. It just is. I write terribly, and my signature is never consistent. It just doesn't look the same. In fact, I've gone to basically, a variation of initials right now. And so my signature may not even match. I don't know how close it would be, but I know if they're going off of my ID, that's not going to match at all if I had to sign my ballot in that way. So there is something to be said to check signatures and make sure that ballots are valid. I get it. But to say it doesn't meet our standard, so therefore it must be valid and we must erase it, that's a problem. If they said it doesn't match, let us get back with you and you can return the ballot, that's a little bit better for me. And I believe Arizona, was doing that. If they had issues with the ballot, they would contact the individuals. The individual had, I believe at the time, it was like 10 days to get the ballot back or something to that effect. I don't recall. Continuing on here, it says in Georgia, signatures for absentee ballot voters are verified twice to ensure that each voter gets one vote and only one vote. So this was another one of those things of Georgia's close. We can't explain how we lost Georgia. Therefore, it must be fraud. You can say what you want in terms of how you believe you lost the game, right? Like we do that all the time in sports. Man, if that ref wouldn't have called that holding penalty at that point in time in the third quarter when it was this, then it wouldn't have killed our drive. And I'm telling you, we would have won because we would have had the momentum and this and that. That killed, like that. We do that stuff all the time. So if you want to go back through, we do it with 2016. What happened in 2016? The FBI, Friday before the election, right? They did all that. You got the whole email investigation that 2 months before the election that was announced that broke FBI rules. And oh my gosh, she wouldn't have lost without that. And oh, we got the Russian and we got the hacking and we got all this sort of stuff, right? All of these things are how we replay the wins and losses in that way. And that's cool. But what you can't do is circumvent the democracy and throw out votes just because it didn't go your way, right? Like one thing that I love is that it's now this funny running joke. One of the soccer teams, they were ahead by like one, and their Twitter account posted, "Stop the vote," or no, "Stop the count," which is hilarious. So now "stop the count" is a thing. If you're ahead, stop the count. The count has to stop so that we can go ahead and consider this vote complete and this game is won, right? So in Pennsylvania, they're fighting as well. And they were actually in court in Pennsylvania trying to get this election overturned in Pennsylvania, right? Because Pennsylvania is a big state, 20 electoral votes. So if you could get those 20 from Pennsylvania and you could get Georgia, right, that starts getting us back to the point where Trump has a shot, right? because I believe Biden's, let me look it up real quick. I believe Biden's at 306. And so if you're looking at 306, you take away 16 from Georgia, 20, yeah, he's at 306, 16 from Georgia, 20 from Pennsylvania. That basically puts him at 270. So now you have to overturn another state. So now you got to get three of them, right? If you only get Pennsylvania and Georgia, that's not enough. You got to get three. You need at least one more electoral vote to make Biden go below 270, which makes that one out of the five that Biden got in Nebraska pretty critical, right? So that 26 alone is not enough. So they're still trying to fight in Wisconsin and Minnesota, or Michigan, one of the two. And they go into court and they bring an expert up and they say, we have this evidence that shows that there was this fraud. And the expert gets up and talks about it, and he presents data from Minnesota, not Michigan, where he was in court. Like, you can't make this stuff up, right? Like, at some point, I lost count. I think they had something like, I don't know, maybe 20 different cases that they were trying to bring. But what does it even look like when you're losing every single one of them? Like, how do you say that there's fraud? Are you telling me that all of these judges are on the take and they're just doing whatever's needed to make sure Biden wins? All of these judges, including the Republican ones, which, back to Pennsylvania, this judge dismissed yesterday, dismissed the Trump campaign lawsuit. They sought to invalidate millions of votes. If I recall correctly, it was like 7.6 million votes or something to that effect. And they wanted to block the certification of the vote. Here's why they say it matters. This again is from Axios. The ruling is another blow to President Trump and his campaign as they seek to discredit election tallies in Pennsylvania and other key swing states, citing baseless and unproven claims of widespread voter fraud. Counties in Pennsylvania must certify their election totals and send them to the Secretary of the Commonwealth by Monday, tomorrow. So Pennsylvania Attorney General Josh Shapiro, who is a Democrat, tweeted shortly after the ruling, "Another one bites the dust," which is quite accurate. A little snarky, but the tweet basically has a portion of the conclusion. Here's the conclusion from the suit. Defendants' motions to dismiss the First Amendment complaint are granted with prejudice. Leave to amend is denied. Again, with prejudice means get it out of here. Don't want to hear it anymore. Among the grounds that could justify a denial of leave to amend are undue delay, bad faith, dilatory motive, prejudice, and futility. Given that, 1, plaintiffs have already amended once as of right. 2, plaintiffs seek to amend simply in order to effectively reinstate their initial complaint and complaints. And 3, the deadline for counties in Pennsylvania to certify their election results to Secretary Bookvar is the 23rd. Amendment would unduly delay resolution of the issues. This is especially true because the court would need to implement a new briefing schedule, conduct a second oral, blah, 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 blah. A few other things going down that path. So this judge actually, and I'm going to pull up what the judge actually stated in his rebuke, because, I mean, he's basically, it's a pretty big slap down. Hold on one second. Let me find it because I want to find the exact statement to see what it was. Here it goes. So I saw this. This is basically some quotes. I don't know who this dude is, Judd Legume. He writes for Popular Information, so he's a writer. I'll keep his portions out and just kind of read what the judge was saying. So the judge was saying, in this action, the Trump campaign and the individual plaintiffs, collectively the plaintiffs, seek to discard millions of votes legally cast by Pennsylvanians from all corners, from Greene County to Pike County and everywhere in between. Plaintiffs asked this court to disenfranchise almost 7 million votes or voters. The court has been unable to find any case in which a plaintiff has sought such drastic remedy in the contest of an election in terms of the sheer, volume of votes as to be invalidated. One might expect that when seeking such a startling outcome, a plaintiff would come formidably armed with compelling legal arguments and factual proof of rampant corruption, such that this court would have no option but to regrettably grant the proposed injunctive relief, despite the impact to the citizens. This has not happened. Instead, this court has been presented with strained legal arguments without merit and speculative accusations in the operative complaint and unsupported by evidence. In the United States of America, this cannot justify the disenfranchisement of a single voter, let alone all of the voters of its sixth most populated state. Our people, laws, and institutions demand more. At bottom, plaintiffs have failed to meet their burden to state a claim upon which relief may be granted. So basically, nothing burger. That's what it boils down to. They went to court with a big old nothing burger, and the judge dismissed it with prejudice. Now, I mean, you can claim deep state, all these other things. This is the factions, the system working against Trump. Like, you can do that. You can feel free. But when these judges are dismissing these cases with prejudice, not just one, I believe the one in Arizona was also dismissed with prejudice, or maybe one of the other northern states. I don't remember. It's too many lawsuits. When they're dismissing these with prejudice because there's not evidence being presented, I mean, at some point, like the legal case can't be, like I mentioned earlier, they said at the press conference, in the Dominion software, you can drag votes and you can drop them in the trash, like on your computer. You can just grab them and move them and drop them. It's right there. Read the software manual. Okay. Did it happen? That's what I want to see. Not it could happen. Did it? That's the thing. Because in 2016, the whole thing was about elections being hacked by Russia. Could that have happened? Absolutely. But the same people were saying, there's no way. That didn't happen. No way. Which, by the way, the machines aren't connected to the internet, or at least weren't in 2016. I don't know about this year. So outside hacking in that way is not something that's it's quite easy to do. You actually have to be physically on site to do that. All right, so that's where we are. Pretty much, it's a wrap. Again, so the Biden campaign, let's go ahead and transition away from that aspect, even though we'll still be touching part of it. The Biden campaign is in the transition mode right now. They're not able to actually transition because of all of this stuff surrounding the election. And it's largely because the administration or parts of the administration are blocking the Biden campaign or the Biden team from actually getting access to funds and getting access to actual intel briefings and these sort of things. So they're actively being blocked from moving forward with the transition. The line of thinking there is, we have a system and the system has to be, Like, we basically got to go through the process. Once the process is done, sure, we'll let them do everything they're supposed to do. If the shoe was flipped, they'd be going crazy. Flipping out. Imagine if Obama, today is the 22nd. Imagine if Obama, 2.5 weeks, 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks after the election, still didn't let Trump touch anything and was still keeping him from starting his transition. Ah, man, the right would be going crazy, just like the left is now, because Trump isn't. So I wanted to do just a little bit in terms of thinking of what does it look like for Biden. I mean, eventually all of this will be settled. There's nothing that Trump can really do. Uh, People on the right are calling for the electors to ignore the votes of the people. In a lot of cases, they can't, or they could actually go to jail or a severe fine. I can't recall exactly the punishment, but some states require that they do certify what the people say. So they're just there kind of as figurehead. So the Biden presidency, once it begins, day one, the biggest thing, as Mike said, I believe last time, last episode, he basically has stated that number one is coronavirus. That's number one. So day one, there's talk of him coming in and doing certain things. And, I'm pretty sure day one, he's going to leave the inauguration, go straight to the Oval and sign some executive orders. I mean, that's the thing to do right now for presidents, right? Day one, go in and just use the pen to do a bunch of stuff. So that's it's going to be interesting because he has to do all of this against the backdrop of COVID. If he's focused on the wrong things, right? As Trump with all of this golfing, the left holds that against him because people are dying and you're out here golfing, right? That's the political narrative aspect is what I'm referring to here. So he has to keep his focus, right? He can't be focused on, like to be frank, he can't be out here with like this Black Lives Matter, painting on streets type stuff as, first official acts, right? Not that I think he would be doing that anyway, but I'm just saying, like, that's furthering the Black Lives Matter movement is not a day one priority for Biden or really any president, like, to be frank. And to be honest, a lot of that stuff is superficial anyway, is what I'm referring to. But actually doing something early within the first 100 days to impact what the movement is fighting for, completely possible. Do I think something specific is going to happen? Maybe. They mentioned during, I believe, the debates that they were looking for a national registry. There you go. Sorry. The national registry of cops who abuse their power, basically. So I would kind of expect that to be maybe middle. So if we're kind of thinking like 10 to 20 things that he's trying to do within the first 100 days, random number, right? So if there's 20, you could say in the top 10-ish, maybe top 15-ish, I could see that happening. But I think he's going to have so much to focus on with the coronavirus that he's going to have to put a bunch of energy into that. So along those lines, what we have right now is we have Pfizer and, oh shoot, how did I forget the name? See, thought it had it all in my dome up here, but 40 tends to do this to you. All right, so so Pfizer has their drug out. They applied for emergency FDA approval, which that's on the way, and then, or potentially on the way, due to what the coronavirus task force have pretty much pushed forward with the Operation Warp Speed, which I'm also going to give you a reference in a bit to a podcast to listen to about details on the vaccine. And then there's one other that I cannot remember. It's from BioNTech, but I forget the name of the vaccine. So anyway, I won't waste your time here with that. If I see it, if I come across it, then I'll reference the exact name. But essentially, there's two that are coming out. Uh, the one that President uh, Trump actually took was called Regeneron, and it's an antibody treatment. And so basically, somebody has it, they take their blood, they extract the antibody, and then they use that to basically create something to inject the antibody, so that way other people can have the antibody in them, which will fight off the coronavirus. Basically, essentially, you're putting little soldiers in your body. So what it boils down to, that are specific to fighting off, in this case, COVID. So Regeneron, there was some um, controversy, I guess you could say, would be putting it mildly. Regeneron was basically created from an aborted male in like 1972 or something like that. And they took those um, stem cells and they ended up basically using that to further the research. I don't know how they use it for so long, but medicine's a marvel to me. So basically, Regeneron expects, this is from Axios, Regeneron expects to have doses of Regen Cove 2 or Regen, Regen Cove 2, pick one, ready for some 80,000 patients by the end of November, about 200,000 patients by the first week of January, and approximately 300 patients in total by the end of January 2021. So basically, 80 this month, 200,000, another 120 basically next month, and then after that, another 100,000 in January. So if you look at that compared to like the hospitalization rates and all those sort of things, that's pretty good, right? Like that's going to get us, mind you, if everybody takes it, but that's going to get us. Actually, let me clarify. If it works effectively and they take it, that could be a really good thing for uh, people who get sick and who are hospitalized, and that will help keep them from spending a long time in the hospital, potentially preventing them from long-term effects, those sort of things, right? So it's rushed for me. I'm not interested in taking something that's so rushed. If I was on my deathbed, shoot me whatever you got. So I don't hold it against people who are ill right now and struggling. I wouldn't hold it against them for taking it, right? The president getting sick and dying is a massive deal on a worldwide scale. So they wouldn't have really given it to him unless they had some confidence in it. So I do consider that because they're going to do whatever they can to protect him, no matter who's in there. They do not want the president dying at all, ever, for any reason. So shooting him up with something that's they're unsure about, probably not. Probably not. So that's good news, potentially. Pfizer's actually applying this week to try to get it through the process as well. So that should work, or should help. If there's that's a vaccine, and the vaccines are actually going to go to the military first. And this is something I hadn't considered. And I was talking to Mike about this privately. So my cousin, super smart, she's in Italy right now, and she's serving. And she mentioned that they had to take it and she couldn't wait. Like she was ready to take it because it's going to allow them to operate back to a normal capacity, because the military can't continue to operate in a uh, stay at home type scenario, right? Because they have to be able to move around. They got to be able to, you know, meet and be in person. Like these things have to happen, right? And obviously, I'm doing a terrible job of explaining all the aspects of what excuse me, what the military needs. But that aspect is something I hadn't considered um, in terms of military effectiveness and readiness. And then also, if the military personnel are getting sick, right? Imagine if you have 2,400 troops somewhere, and now you got 800 of them sick. Like that changes everything. Like that's a massive amount of your people who are sick. Uh, and then even after they're, well or out of quarantine, they may still have some lingering effects, right? So it's interesting because I hadn't considered it, but the military is about to get shot up with this thing. That's going to be a pretty large number of people who will find out relatively quickly if that vaccine has some nasty side effects. What I heard Joe Rogan talking about it, and he was saying which one basically felt felt like 3 days. Uh, there are a lot of people who would trade that, right? Like I'll take it for 2 to 3 days if I can get like if we can stop all of these restrictions and things, right? So things like, you know, the shutdowns that are happening in New York with the schools. Imagine if all those kids had the vaccine, right? And then we kind of start treating it kind of like the flu, right? So we don't necessarily stop what we're doing. What we do is vaccinate mostly. Everybody vaccinates. And then we just continue on with life, right? So if this all works, if this is all great, and Regeneron is able to do that for up to 300,000 by the end of January, we could be in a pretty good spot as long as this thing doesn't mutate in another way, kind of like how swine flu did. We beat the first one relatively quickly, and then it mutated and around September or so. And then we went through for another 5 months before we were clear to do anything else. So hopefully it doesn't mutate and do something to that effect. But things could be looking up come January. So along those lines, if it is, and we're able to get to the point where you can get the vaccine and you can move about normally, uh, you can confidently state in your area that you're safe. The schools are safe. Everybody's back working in the office if they work in the office. Uh, that changes Biden's presidency dramatically, right? I think we're still headed for another recession. We're going to see another financial drop, and he's going to have to deal with that. He may come into office on the 20th, and he may actually have the same concept of, a down economy. We've been built on pixie sticks for a long time, and we've just been kind of pushing it down the road. Uh, I don't see him fixing that. I don't see him changing anything about that. We're going to find out, I believe tomorrow, we're going to start seeing who his cabinet picks are. I would be very surprised if he does not pick somebody from Wall Street to run the treasury. I'd be very surprised, right? Like when Trump came in, I'm going to drain the swamp, right? Thing that he did. Well, he may have pulled some water out of it, but he put some more alligators in there. Mnuchin came directly from Wall Street. That's the swamp. Like they're all in that swamp, right? A lot of his cabinet members, swamp creatures, same dudes, right? As Mike had mentioned, Biden's probably going to be doing the same exact thing. Right now, Trump is one who ran on draining the swamp and then ended up filling the swamp with more swamp creatures. Biden didn't say anything about draining the swamp. So I'm pretty sure he's about to fill the swamp with some more swamp creatures, right? So we'll see kind of who he puts in, where they are, and that'll kind of give us an idea of where he's planning on going with some of these things. There's talk of the college debt forgiveness. That's one of the things that they're talking about doing right now. There's a lot of people up in arms about it. Like, I paid for mine, you should have to pay for yours, right? It's, I don't want it because I don't want you to have it because I can't get it, right? Typical, you know, selfish approach to how we deal with progress in America. Typical way that we do things. Uh, I think Biden could possibly do that within the first 60 days. I would say, again, everything is up in the air based on COVID, right? So I'm just speculating on what could possibly happen within the first 60 days as this thing goes forward. Uh, if things are perfect and we're able to move forward and we're not hit with another setback where we have to literally like shut down states again, which I'm in Texas, and Governor Abbott said, nope, not doing it. We're not shutting down the state again. No matter what's going on, we're not shutting it down. So depending on your state, you may see a shutdown. I'm not sure if Texas is going to see one at all, even if it gets worse and worse and worse. You know, it's become a little political now at this point to do so. So again, let's say everything is good to go. I think we could see Biden actually moving forward with some of these things like college debt forgiveness. I could see him doing that. Another thing I think we could possibly see is some prison reform. So Kamala takes a bad rap for her the job she did as a prosecutor when she was in California. She was the attorney general, and everybody who was locked up in California during that time is her fault, according to the people who can't stand her. Because she's the big boss, it's her fault, right? And so all of that stuff rolls up, essentially. Typical type stuff, right? But that wasn't all she did. She didn't just go out and target a bunch of people. She didn't go out and, you know, misapply truancy, which truancy is here in Texas. It's everywhere. Truancy is if your kids are missing too many dates of school, you can get fined. You can go to jail. Right. I've had to deal with truancy. It can happen from tardies, not just absences. So the thing is nobody actually did. There were just like threats of truancy, which is pretty common, right? But these things are really held against her. And I'm not saying in defending any of the things that she did that were nefarious, not by any measure. I would never do that. But things to the effect of like withholding evidence because it came in late, or not allowing evidence because it came in late. So basically you had to have evidence in on Tuesday. They brought it in on Wednesday. They didn't allow it in. So an innocent man didn't get released, stuff like that, right? I wouldn't do those things if the guy was innocent. But those are the things that you hear all about. But the things you don't hear about is the things that she was fighting for with criminal justice and trying to do some other things, right? And again, this is not a defense of Kamala in any way. She had her issues for sure there. But there were some attempts to try to address some of these things in relation to the prison reform, right? So I could see her on a larger scale, especially in the position that she's in now, trying to push Joe a lot more on some of these things that negatively impact the Black community. and that being one of the biggest ones, right? Starting back from Nixon, when first war on drugs started, and then every president after that, you can just see it continually getting worse until I think the first drop we started seeing was 2012. When you look at the data, 2012 or 2013, it started dropping some, and I think it's continued to largely drop since then. That we're still on a down slope, which is good, but the amount of people that we have locked up is just ridiculous. We shouldn't need private prisons. Let's just be real. So my hope is, and this is what I'll be looking forward to, is within that first 100 days, which is the benchmark for presidents, right? They try to go with 100 days. So why Trump tried to do all these executive orders because he wanted to beat how many Obama did based on sheer numbers. Some of them were ludicrous. Some of them didn't even get enacted. But it was a numbers game because he wanted to show that he was better than Obama, that sort of thing, right? So it's all that sort of stuff. I don't care about those things. I want to see actionable change. I want to see what's really going on, and I want to see these things being pushed from the high. As with Trump, I came in hoping that Trump will be successful in the right areas. I don't want Trump to be successful at this. Take whatever, pick whichever hot topic you want, kids in cages, all that sort of thing, blah, 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 whatever. I don't want to see him successful with sending millions and billions of dollars to the southern border and building a wall, because it's not going to help. It's not going to work. It's not going to help, right? I don't want to see that level of success on those things, right? And everybody has their things, right? And some people will say, I want success with that because I think immigration is a big deal. I just, based on the data, the wall's not going to help based on the data. Not the way that he's talking about. Walls on the southern border can help. But there are definitely issues, and I think there are better ways to address these issues than a wall. Anyway, point being, I wanted him to succeed, so I wanted to see these things happen. Same things with Joe Biden. I want to see Joe Biden succeed. I don't want to see him succeed in some of these bad ways. I don't want to see him raise taxes. I don't care. I don't care how much the government needs in terms of spending. Well, not in terms of spending, but in terms of their budget shortfall, right? Because Trump created a budget shortfall. He dropped taxes and increased spending. I mean, you can't do that at your house, right? Like, you can't go quit your job or start working part-time and then go get a new car and increase your budget. That may throw your budget off quite a bit, right? That's basically what Trump did. Cut business taxes, not personal. Well, personal cut by like 2%, but that's nothing. I'll take whatever, but that's really nothing. Cut the business taxes, uh, you know, pretty low to 21%. Great. I'm a business owner. I always like that. But then you raised your spending, and you spent and spent and spent and spent. That doesn't work. So I don't care that Biden's trying to fix Trump's mistake. I think he's doing it wrong if he raises taxes. And apologies, you guys may be able to hear the folks are out here taking care of our lawn today. So I want to see him succeed. I just don't want to see the dumb mistakes, right? I don't want to see him succeed at raising taxes, because I think that would be a mistake. I would rather him cut the budget. Fix your budget, right? If cutting the business taxes is the problem, fix the budget. That's it. That's it. I mean, for me, that's simple, right? Stop taking our money and fix your budget. Stop giving out all this money for all these grants and all these things to, review and see, do snails have sex more in the morning or in the evening, and how does that impact the environment? Don't nobody want to see it. Like, sure, I'm cool with exploration. I'm cool with studies. I have no problem, but they're giving millions of dollars away for these kind of grants and things, man. Like it's insane how much money. I highly suggest just Google federal fumbles. The federal fumbles. It's by, and I'm looking at James Lankford, right? Now, I'm not a fan of James Lankford. He can do some ridiculously partisan things sometimes, which they all can, of course. But they just, let's just say, I'm not a fan of James Lankford in that way. But that doesn't mean that I avoid and I ignore everybody that I'm not a fan of. I'll tell you outright the things that I believe Trump did right. And I think he's one of the worst presidents, at least the worst in my lifetime, but one of the worst presidents we've had. So Langford, he has this federal fumbles, and they all play it up with the whole football theme and stuff now. And this volume 5, I believe, is the current one. And they basically go through and they show you what's going on, who's spending what, where's it going, and how much is being spent. And it's essentially the idea of the fumbles, quote unquote, in a football metaphor sense. It's the fumbles, the mistakes that we've made as a government to actually give money, right? So I just pulled it up real quick. And there's basically 162.1 billion was created out of thin air by taking advantage of a loophole meant to ensure military readiness. The Overseas Contingency Operations account and our federal appropriations is used to fund combat ground vehicles, blah, blah, blah. The 2011 budget caps deal also contained a loophole that exempted the OCO, the Overseas Contingency Operations, from the spending limits. Starting in fiscal year 12, the Obama administration began to take advantage of the loophole, requesting billions of OCO funds for the Department of State, initiatives to build consulates in Iraq ahead of the ill-timed withdrawal, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So this is basically like along those lines of what they do with the federal fumbles. Disaster relief fund, 124 billion blew straight off the caps. I'll just keep scrolling down these main portions. The shutdowns. Let's see, at least 3.7 billion spent on back pay for furloughed federal workers, furloughed, whatever. At least 338 million wasted on extra administrative work, lost revenue, and late fees on interest payments. In addition, nearly 15 million days of productivity among furloughed employees were lost, totaling nearly 57,000 years. I get what you're saying, but is what it is. Russian grants cost 2.9 million. So the Steller sea lions, fun fact, the Steller sea lion is a marine mammal species found in Russia and the Northern Pacific. Not a fun fact, in recent years, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, awarded nearly $1.7 million to a consulting group to study Steller sea lions in Russia. $1.7 million to study sea lions in Russia. What does that have to do with the price of tea in China, as the quote goes? So that's the things that are in federal fumbles, right? And Lankford's a Republican, so you can expect there to be some sway in here. As I was scrolling, I saw him saying something about thankful President Trump stopped something, sort of thing. So you can expect a little sway in here. But the money is literally real, no matter what the narrative is in here and how it's woven around. The money is spent, the money is real, and it's going out in these ways. So fix your budget. Get your hand out of our pockets. That's what it boils down to. You got to fix the budget and get your hand out of our pockets. I mean, so again, I want them to be successful. Be successful, but be successful at the right things that positively impact our lives, right? I think people are so ready for a president that's not out tweeting and not out taking credit for everything. And, just the narcissism is gone, right? Like they all have some narcissism. Let's just be clear. Trump is a different kind of animal when it comes to narcissism. So people want to break. I get it. But we can't take our eyes off the ball, because the minute we relax and we let the Biden administration off the hook, that's when they'll be easily able to take advantage of us. You don't have to take my word for it. You can just go back in the last 20 years. We're still in the war that was created 19 years ago. NSA, CIA, all these folks spying on American people, reading all of our details. Just watch the Snowden movie and you'll see what I'm talking about if you don't recall all of that stuff happening. James Clapper telling us they're not spying on us, not intentionally, or whatever word he used to kind of equivocate and get around the fact that he was lying. They're going to do these things. Just what they're going to do. And if you take your eye off the ball and you allow them to do them, they're going to do them. So don't take your foot off the pedal. If you were tough on Trump when Trump said something dumb, stay on Biden. If you were tough on Trump when something happened in the Trump administration that was negative, do the same with Biden. Don't flip-flop and now start making excuses for Biden if you weren't doing that with Trump, right? Whoever is in that office deserves scrutiny. Every week, we're going to come and bring you that scrutiny. Every time something's happening, just like we've been doing for the last 3 years. We're going to bring it to you because it's important. We have to stay on them. We can't let them off the hook. So don't let your party get you in the position to where you are excusing their mistakes and their fumbles. Let's stick to the plan of holding our government accountable. We do that, we might end up actually seeing some actual change. Hoping so. We'll see. We're the Political Free Agents. We do this thing Sundays, 2 p.m., Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Catch us live on YouTube, or you can catch just the audio feed, but you can find both of them on politicalfreeagents.com. You can click the YouTube link, click live at the top as well. You can get the audio link from there. And then you can also catch all of our the majority of our past episodes on there as well. We have our social media up as well at PFA Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.